And I remember going to the school for some reason in the first few months he was there, and he was out running around with a football with someone, just screaming his head off. And I just remember looking over, I was like, is that my kid? Like, it was that drastic, like so night and day. What they really did was taught him what his dyslexia is and how to advocate for himself. And that piece to me is so huge. It not only built his confidence, but I think he sees himself as unique.
I'm Nicole Holcomb, attorney by day and podcaster by night, a former educator, school counselor, and administrator, and mom to a 9-year-old daughter with dyslexia, who loves all things Harry Potter, Minecraft, and science. A few years ago, she was identified with dyslexia, and our life seemed to turn upside down for a while, quite literally. I created the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast to help you navigate the upside down journey of dyslexia. You got this. If you're wanting to thrive as a mom in this dyslexia journey, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Mother's Day may be celebrated one day of the year, but here on the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast, we are celebrating moms for the entire month of May. Today, I'm talking to one of the 8 amazing warrior moms who are sharing their personal parenting dyslexia journey with us. Grab your earbuds and enjoy learning from moms who are taking you behind the scenes of parenting dyslexic kiddos. All right, today on the podcast, we have with us Rebecca Warner, and I'm delighted to have her on this show and to be a part of this special Mother's Day series. And I know you're going to enjoy her story and what she has to share with us today. So we're going to jump right in. Welcome, Rebecca, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I am so excited what you are doing, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. So what we're going to do today is we're, just going to have a conversation about, the topic that's near and dear to all of our hearts, which is dyslexia. And I'd love just to maybe start out a little bit with, telling us a little bit about your journey, maybe some of those aha moments at the early stages, when you get those pieces where things just, something just didn't feel right along the way. So maybe kind of take us back a little bit to the beginning and we'll, can kind of walk through some of those pieces together.
When my son started kindergarten, I thought he was the most creative and brilliant little thing. And about felt like I'd been punched in the stomach when in October, he'd been there a whopping 6 to 8 weeks. And the teacher said he might need to repeat kindergarten. And I didn't understand, does he not know the color red? I didn't understand,
right.
What can he not do? And she said that he had been pulled for some saying the alphabet and reading and working with his letters and things. And I was I remember thinking oh, I had no idea. Nobody told me that. And I'll never forget this. And I love this teacher, but she looked at me and she said, well, legally, we don't have to tell you that. And I just remember thinking, oh, okay, I guess I hadn't even thought of this as a legal issue.
Right.
And so as my husband's dyslexic and his sister is severely dyslexic, as my son, I found out was pretty severe to profound. And as I started to understand his dyslexia, and I made it my mission to know every person in Richmond, Virginia who worked with dyslexia, had any expertise in it. I would know where they ate, the favorite wine, they would be in my cell phone. And I sort of embarked on this journey to help my son. And as my aha moments was realizing my big epiphany that dyslexia can be actually a truly wonderful thing, and understanding when people say it's a gift, that it's not a gift in the 3rd grade, but that there
right.
is an amazing side to it and how common it is. And that was a big, I kept hearing this 1 in 5. And, as I started delving into some international advocacy, I was like, okay, maybe 1 in 7, 15 to 20, you start looking at just so many kids. And so I had met with other women and joined some support group things. And one of them, we were meeting with a language fundamentalist who was Orton Gillingham certified. And we'd heard about this thing called Decoding Dyslexia. This was about 2012. And I thought the name was a mouthful, but I'm like, let's jump in and make the Virginia chapter, because we wanted to do something. We were like, if I'm going to learn all this stuff about what's going on, I'm going to take some people with me.
Yeah.
So we started Decoding Dyslexia Virginia, and within a few months, we had some fabulous women in Northern Virginia and Charlottesville. And it really launched a network of support that I selfishly started for myself. I really needed. It was at my own support group meeting that I basically thought that dyslexia schools in my city were unobtainable because they were expensive. And this one woman was like, you should just go walk the halls and just see what it's about. And they have financial aid, and they have, there's different ways with tax deductions, you could bring it down. And my public school story is just the long fight, like the long haul of trying to educate the teachers from that very beginning step of like, legally, we don't have to do this, 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 and this, and realizing, by the 5th grade, he can't write his name. He can't say the alphabet. He can't say the months of the year. He's in the 4th percentile for spelling. And middle schools, they're like, well, we don't teach writing in middle school. So I put him in the new community school, and it was a game changer to see how trained teachers who weren't just trained in language fundamentals and structured literacy, but who also understood the emotional impact that was up against my son. And so my advocacy turned, as once he was in a safe space, to reaching those parents that are just starting on that journey, and to try to, what would I say to them? What do I wish I had had? What would have been helpful 10 years ago? And how can we make changes now? Because that 10 years ago could have been yesterday. We're still in the same place in some areas.
Yeah. So sure. So when you were going through those pieces there, thank you for sharing. At what point, you said at some point that you changed schools. Is that in middle school, you said?
Yes. In the beginning of 3rd or 4th grade, my son was sitting at the table, and just, it still chokes me up to talk about it. He kind of put his head down. He's like, I don't think I can do it anymore. I'm like, oh, what's your homework? Word's your way. What are we doing? And he just looked at me and said, I can't keep pretending that I'm reading. And it was like, oh my gosh, we can't do that. And that's when I really started thinking, like, I can't keep him here. And he started to, the emotional side was very eye-opening to me. And I think whenever I talk to parents now, I have a monthly support group meeting that actually has not been going on with COVID, but when they're like, should I do this? Like, should I do tutoring? Should I look at schools? My first question always is, how is he doing or she doing with the emotions? Like, where do you net out with are there tears, not just like who wants to do homework, but it real kind of, you get into this space, the shame of dyslexia, and being in a space where you feel so misunderstood and everybody else is excelling, and these kids are smart, and they just like, why is this, so difficult for me? So that's my go-to space, is that they can tell you what to do.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is just, I think when we start seeing those emotional pieces or start seeing other signs, I mean, that's how it was for us too. Our daughter was in 1st grade when we had her identified, and we started with some tutoring in Orton Gillingham, what we're supposed to do. But then she started getting, stomach aches, and her teacher would call and say, she's complaining that her stomach hurts. She loves school, but I didn't realize till later, when we've moved her to a different school that's for dyslexics, that later in life, she says, which, it's a couple of years later, she says, my friends were reading chapter books. And so she was making herself sick. And I remember reaching out to someone that was knowledgeable in the Atlanta area. And I was like, I'm struggling. I don't know what to do here. And she said, Nicole, you're not providing enough remediation. She is struggling, and you're seeing all these signs because you're not giving her enough of what she needs. Right. So you're going to need to take a step back and give her reorganize. And of course, at this point, it's about this time of the year. So we kind of hang tight because we're doing speech and other things. And then we reevaluate school for the next fall. But I think that's really, as a parent, they're struggling. But when you start seeing those emotional pieces, it's a game changer,
thing, it puts dyslexia so on the back burner. If we lose these kids with that shame and the anxiety, you have a whole different world of problems, and it's not nearly as much fun as dyslexia. So
right. And you're right. When you said earlier, that it's hard early on when people say it's a gift. And I say that sometimes too, but I also constantly say, but these academic years are hard. There's
Yeah.
just no way around them. I've interviewed a lot of adults too that are successful, and they all say the same thing. Your husband and his sister may say the same thing. You know, you can be successful as an adult. There may still be things that, you know, like some people may not enjoy reading a book. They may enjoy audiobooks, for example. Not that that's a problem, right? It's just a different way to consume your information. But those academic years, especially if they stay in a traditional setting, it's hard. It is just hard. There's just no way around it. But like you said, it's finding those pieces that are things that light them up, you know, things that are their passions. And so when you move schools, before you move schools, were you doing some remediation and some tutoring?
Yes.
And
He had a tutor in the afternoons. It was it was illegal to have them in the school, so I had to take him after school, which knocked out all sports.
Yeah,
he's exhausted.
I was going to say the same thing.
Rush hour, so from 4 to, you know, jump in the car at 3. I remember him coming in, have to use the bathroom. I'm like, quick, you know,
right.
And then we race across town to get there by 4 o'clock, and then we're getting out at 5, and we'd be in this awful traffic coming back. So it was a 3:30 to 5:30, sometimes 6 ordeal.
Mm-hmm. And how many days a week was he having to do that?
We did it 2 to 3 days a week for his 5th grade year.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think there was some progress made, I saw so much of what he was missing out on, and it made me so sad. Like, I mean, sports.
And then he had all day at school where he was trying just to hold it together and get through the day. And so that was an emotional toll, I'm sure, as well.
Teachers, who I'm very supportive of teachers, but I support, I'm all about art and education, and that's what's going to get through all of this junk that's happened the last 18 months or so. But I think our teachers need to be supported with knowledge, you know, that pen is mightier than the sword kind of thing. And we can't expect them to work with all these different learning differences without the training behind them. And not having a supportive, the reading specialists here in Virginia were not even trained to work with dyslexia. And that was a big piece of what Decoding Dyslexia did. Is we're grassroots. We're not an organization here in Virginia. I mean, we're very organized. We say that, you know, that distraught mothers can do more research than the FBI, and we did. And we passed laws to require all of our teachers to have some dyslexia training, and those were just recently revamped with the Department of Education. They're free to the public. I would be happy to give you links at the end. It's
absolutely. I'll add those to the show notes for everybody. Absolutely.
30 to 40 minute thing that you can send to your teachers and say, it's just basically, what is dyslexia? What are the kind of flags that might indicate that? What are the symptoms? You know, but it's a good, we were pleased. They invited some of the parents to the Department of Education to view what they had put together. And, you know, sometimes we're ready to go in there for a fight. And this time I was like, y'all did well. Like that, it was good.
Yeah. And that's so good, because so often, you know, teachers want to do what's best for your child, but they just don't know, right? They just don't know. So if you can give them some understanding, many times it sparks an interest in them. I know I've spoke to many tutors through this podcast, and they said, you know, many of them started out as teachers or are currently teachers, but just started having a passion for teaching reading, and because their eyes were opened up to, wow, this is like a whole different world, and all kids can learn to read through these methods, which is amazing.
That was our first big bill. I think that passed in 2016. And then we've every year chiseled along. We've got that parent notification. Remember the teacher who said, like, legally, we don't have to tell you, where the parents are notified when benchmarks aren't being met. And because they've been through this module, maybe some suggestions can be made. And the real tackle we're going now is with the University of Virginia to change their curriculum, because it's not fair to the teachers who spend 6 figures on a education and then have some moms go, you didn't do it right, you know. So if we can go to the beginning,
I think
all these band-aid
fix,
we need to have teachers coming out of understand how the brain works and understand, you know, how literacy is impacted by, you know, channels in the brain and that kind of stuff that I don't know about, but I know a lot of people who know about it. And
absolutely. I think you've hit the nail there, because it is, you know, it is easy for us to point fingers at education and schools, but it does start sooner than that, which is them getting the right training even before they get to their school through their education programs. And I do have an undergrad in elementary education, and
Yeah.
I didn't get that. I mean, it's been a minute. I will say that, but dyslexia was definitely around then. But I didn't get that intensive training. I even had practicums and reading and different things, and we talked about word webs and things we could create, but I don't recall us diving into how the brain works. We talked about, developmental, like at this age, a child should be doing this. But I think that also gets you into the pieces of, oh, well, it's developmentally appropriate to write your letters and numbers behind, backwards. We were told that with our daughter. Well, we got to hold on a second because, that's kind of something they do at the beginning. And so I think many of us hear that, and it doesn't, that's not the full picture of dyslexia, as I found out quickly, but it's also, she still does that to today in 4th grade. So I don't know that that's going to ever,
my big message to when I talk with parents is when I chose to help with decoding dyslexia and get that going, and I've started my own dyslexia awareness campaign. I'm the first to say, I don't have the letters behind my name, but I feel like I have 10 years of talking to parents and being a parent and sitting in on the conferences and seminars and tutoring to speak to that. And that's what I still get excited about is watching that aha moment and meeting people new to dyslexia, whether they're teachers or parents or the kids, and kind of talking to them about what it is and what's happening. And that's still an interesting piece to me.
Yeah, it is. Let me go back for just a second. I wanted to unpack something a little bit more before we move on, which is when you change schools, and I know not everybody's able to do that, but you're right. I do appreciate you sharing that. There are scholarships for many schools. There's, there are financial aid. There are pieces that are available at majority, if not all, of private schools, especially those dyslexia schools, because they do their own fundraising. And many times through your state Department of Education, they have things as well, depending on what state you're in. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I don't want people to think, oh, there's no way we can afford that. We don't even need to look. Explore it. If it's not a good fit, then that's fine.
All I did was start exploring the options. I was able to get a scholarship through the public schools because he was had an IEP. There was some money available. And, each one was maybe a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there, but even like lunches and your mileage getting to the school, it's 11 miles away. And that's 22 miles round trip. And if you have lunch and I have to go back, so you chisel away until it was within reach that I felt like, okay, now I'm offsetting how much tutoring and therapy am I doing forever, So,
Well, and then too, just the whole school day looks different. I know it does for our daughter. So let's talk a little bit about that. So when you switch schools, and how long has he been? Is he still at that school?
So he's still at New Community. He's going to be a senior next year. He's amazing. Now in the National Honor Society.
I was just going to say, what's been the difference? What have you seen being the difference?
I remember going, so he started in the 6th grade, and I remember my mousy, he'd become, we used to be this exuberant little boy, and he'd be this so tight, like quiet little guy. And I remember going to the school for some reason in the first few months he was there, and he was out running around with a football with someone, just screaming his head off. And I just remember looking over, I was like, is that my kid? Like, it was that drastic, like so night and day. And he was, I think 6th grade is young, that early intervention. It wasn't like he was a junior in high school and suddenly they were putting you in this special, quotey fingers school. And what they really did was taught him what his dyslexia is and how to advocate for himself. And that piece to me is so huge. It not only built his confidence, but I think he sees himself as unique, but that comes with a lot of the interesting creative pieces. And so he immediately started doing sports. He's not the world's best soccer player or baseball player or basketball player, but he's tried them all. He's doing tennis this year. He's never done tennis before, but he's got the time built in to explore that. Yeah. And when he was in these tutoring after school, that was really hard for us to find that.
Yeah, because they end up sacrificing those pieces. They don't get to do the things that they see their friends doing. Right. And we found too that it just, it's almost like a relief because everybody around you is dyslexic, or
Yeah.
everybody has some kind of, if you're at a school where there's language
Oh,
concerns. And so it kind of just takes the weight off their shoulders,
I love his group of friends. He has this tight group of friends. They're called the Bonfire Group because they used to start with bonfires, and then with COVID, that's about all we can do. So, but they are like so love each other, but tease each other. I mean, Fox is really like just this last year as a junior, he came to me and said, Mom, I think I need to let go of the spelling. And I'm like, we can still learn the syllable patterns. We've got, we got 3 more semesters. He's like, well, I've been having a talk with my language fundamental teacher, my LF teacher, and we need to move on to like essays and job applications and your voice and expression. And I was like, but spelling, my little English person, he's like, Mom, I misspelled the word ham. And I got real quiet. I was like, he's gonna be 18. I'm like, ham? Like, how do you misspell ham? His spelling is that bad. Yes, he put an E on it or something, And so I think that's also been a piece of he's teaching an electrical engineering class. He's enrolled in 2 community colleges. He took welding. He's like I said, he's National Honor Society. I can't say enough wonderful things about the other things he's doing that have not anything to do with spelling.
Right.
So he and he's still working on that, but he uses all the tools in the toolbox that they've taught him. But he's
Right.
Every time he goes back to spelling, it's like he's back at the beginning. I feel like there's that weird disconnect.
Yeah, it does. And it seems like for us too, we work on something and then we go back to it. And I'm like, I know for dyslexics, they have to do it so many times
Right.
before it clicks for them. And sometimes it doesn't. And it's just like, why? I just can't get it. Like she just can't. And I'm like, you know what? You just got to pick your battles sometimes. And if that's going to be the one that we just know we have to work around
his
and
stories
get tools.
and his voice, he's developed that. I mean, he was
That's
absolutely
amazing.
right. Just in this last year, I mean, I've read some of his kind of essays and stories he's read, and they're great. And you have to know when to hold them and fold them. And we kind of folded a little bit on the spelling, but
yeah. But the awareness is big though, because so he knows that so that he can put tools in place as he goes to college and moves on, to adulthood to figure those things out. And that's huge too, it really is. So that's amazing. Well, let's talk a little bit about what do you find to be, let's start here because I love this question. What do you find to be the most rewarding part of raising a child with dyslexia?
Oh boy, the most rewarding part about raising a child with dyslexia. I mean, I do love that out of the box approach, and I mean he's got such a healthy attitude with it now that we can go back and yell at when he'd yell at his brother, "You're fat," and his brother looked back, "You can't read," and like all these funny stuff. We can laugh about all that stuff now, but I think some of the the rewarding parts is when he succeeds, I succeed a little bit, because I do know this. And I mean, I'm not trying to toot my horn, but if I hadn't stepped in the way I did, and it's funny, my husband is dyslexic also, and I don't know where I net out with something, but he didn't have that support structure when he was a kid. And I can see it, and really as his wife, like interesting ways that I know he could have, should have, if he'd had, the resources and tools behind him. So I think the rewarding side is with every little step that Fox takes, I feel this kind of thrill that we're progressing somewhere with dyslexia. And I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're so much further than 10 years ago when he was in kindergarten. And it's exciting for me to see. I mean, I feel like this group of women I've been working with, we've really made a difference. I just talked to a woman from Fargo who's moving to Richmond. She's never even been in Virginia before, but she's coming for the dyslexia resources that are here. And she's coming for, she's going to go to the new community as her plan. But I think she's also aware that there's a lot going on here in Richmond, and I have to tip my hat to a lot of decoding dyslexia people. I mean, it's there because we did it, and I'm excited to talk with you today because as my own son is looking at colleges and branching out, I'm not saying this will always be a passion for me, but there's something that's powerful and unique when you're in it, and you're it's unfolding for you. And all of the fears of what's going on, but also the excitement of what's going on really pushes you to take this dyslexia conversation to a deeper space. And so I'm hoping that somebody listening to this will be like, "That's me! It's my calling,"
Yeah.
and jump on board, because I think
Mhm.
the momentum's there now, and it's to encourage people to come along, because we are not there yet. We still
Yeah,
need a lot.
absolutely. Unfortunately, you're right there. And that's one of the things too is our daughter was identified in first grade. She's now in fourth grade, getting ready for fifth grade. And that was one of the many reasons I wanted to start a blog and then a
Yeah,
podcast was because I felt like, we were a couple of years out from the very beginning, but yet I
yeah,
still remember those pieces. And I thought, how neat would it be to walk everybody along the
yeah,
journey. And then, 10 years out from now, I'll have all of these
yeah,
resources for someone else that walks in the door that's like, okay, because
right.
as we move to middle school, then, not that I don't talk about middle school. And I just did a podcast not too long ago about accommodations for the ACT and SAT, because there's things they need to be thinking about early on. And
Mhm.
so I try to incorporate that. But I think from my perspective going through it, will also perhaps pivot and change the way I present
Yeah,
information. And so I'm hoping that that will be helpful for moms that are following.
right,
But I
right.
also appreciate reaching out to people like yourself who, your journey will never be over. You're always going to be his
Right,
biggest advocate. I know that. But just handing that over to him to now be
yeah,
able to self advocate
right,
is huge, right? And it's all that invisible
yeah,
parenting people don't see, those pats on the back that we should be
mhm,
getting. And so those wins are your wins. And so that is,
yeah,
an amazing feeling as he, completes that senior year. So that is, so let's talk a little bit about about the challenges. And I say that as in, a mom that's just starting out and everything feels like a challenge. But what do you
mhm.
think is unique to having a child with dyslexia? Is it the education piece with the teachers, or what do you think you would advise people as far as some of the challenges just being dyslexic, not necessarily your personal child, but just, being on that journey? What's challenging about that?
Well, there's different phases. It's almost like I think I read in some psychology report, it's like the phases of death. In the beginning is like the crying in your pillow. What the heck is going on here? You just, he can't say the alphabet. He can't say our phone number. He can't, the sequencing thing. Um, but once you, for me, it's like first it's the crying in your pillow. And then there's this phase called coffee where you're just meeting with everybody and trying to figure out and researching. And then you go into what I call the epiphany, where you're like, oh my gosh, this is dyslexia. And you start to, you understand it. And then you're just so angry after that, for me. And I think that's a dangerous place to be. Although anger can be a good emotion, it takes you there. But then you might find yourself right back at crying in your pillow and it starts over again. But I got caught somewhere in the coffee phase, I think. But I think just an awareness of that you're about to come onto these different phases, and kind of look at yourself like, where am I in that place? And I mean, I don't know if I'm totally answering what you're saying
No,
here
yeah,
about,
absolutely.
but I think the self-awareness as we parent and as we learn how to parent these kids. I mean, every parent's learning how to parent. I mean, that sounds a little woo-woo, but there is something unique about a dyslexic kid, and it does require a level of patience. And if you understand why they're so literal, or why they can't, just copy it down, or why, all these little things about dyslexia that I think back when he was young and I'd get so frustrated. And now I just have to, and I know I love it. Like when he does stuff, it's almost like, oh, okay, got it. You read that. I mean, the pqbd, like the jewelry that I did. I mean, he flips all those letters, and it was like a fun game to read his little writings, because I'd have to go from the Q to the B, and it wasn't just the B and D flip. Sometimes there'd be a
Right.
P in there and all that.
Hmm.
So I just think that self-awareness, and to cut yourself some slack. A lot of parents blame themselves for not, like, oh, I should have known this, or I didn't do this, and we've all got that story when you realize why he's carrying the huge backpack around everywhere, and why they can't do the combination lock at school. And then once you know about it. But
So let's talk about your journey to jewelry, because
Okay.
I told you before we got on the call that I'm a huge fan.
Yay.
I got my first piece from actually my OG tutor. We're good
Oh, nice.
friends, and
Okay.
she gave me the keychain.
Oh,
And
good.
then since I have the necklace and the earrings and the
Cool.
bracelet,
Yeah.
and my earrings are my favorite piece, but today I'm actually starting a course for moms that are just starting this dyslexia journey, and I'm
Hmm.
doing a little welcome packet I'm sending in the mail. And so they're going to get a piece. I'm not going to tell
Oh,
them what it is right now, but they're going to get a piece with their package. And so I've already ordered several things from
yeah.
your website, but I absolutely love them, and I get lots of compliments, and it
Yeah.
just what I like. I don't know if this is was your thought about it or if it just kind of happened, but one thing I really like about it is people notice and they ask questions, and I
Yep.
love that about it. So share with us how this
So,
journey ended up you creating jewelry and what
yeah.
that looks like for people that don't know.
Well, so I became a jeweler with my mother. We started a business in the 90s. So it wasn't just out of thin air that I came up like, oh, let's do a jewelry line. And in maybe 2009, I was working with Prevent Child Abuse America as they were going from a blue ribbon to a pinwheel. And at the same time, I was working in DC with the National AIDS Foundation, that was the original ribbon before breast cancer and all that. And they were trying to hold on to their ribbon and move forward with that. And I really working with these two groups and realizing how powerful the symbolism of design and how much you can say without words. So that was happening before I even really thought twice about dyslexia. And then when my son came in with dyslexia, I hated the word dyslexia. I couldn't spell it. No one can spell it. You know, you don't even have to be dyslexic to be what.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I realized after, getting involved that there was no symbol for dyslexia. Autism had this puzzle piece, and I researched that, and there's a lot of drama about the puzzle piece. And I think a lot of the autism folks didn't like the puzzle piece, and they're just thinking like it would be so nice for parents to that symbol would you'd know it was something to do with dyslexia. But I also wanted my son was flipping letters, and I thought that's what dyslexia was. I'm the person that I'm trying to reach all the time. I thought you're just reading backwards or something, but and then realizing that it's the mapping and the sequencing with the graphemes and the phonemes and
Right.
understanding that. So I kind of went for this myth buster thing about that. I wanted it simple and plain, that had this kind of secret little message. It's not like you see the
Hmm.
letters P, Q, B, and D, but they're all four together enclosed in their circle. And I have it like that's holding them together. And it's a chance for someone to say, "Oh, those are nice." It's happened to me so many times in the elevators. "Oh, that's a nice pair of earrings," and
Yes.
I'm like, "Yeah, this is a symbol for dyslexia." Oh, and I'm yeah. A lot of people think it's just flipping letters, but it's something, and it just starts that conversation in a
Yes.
way that I think art has that language of its own, and you just sort of dive into it. And I purposely I did trademark it because I didn't want to find out like it seems too simple, like Harley Davidsons are now wheels of or whatever. So I
Right.
I did trademark it, but I freely give it to folks to put on for. I've done races. There's a school in
Mhm.
Kenya that uses it. When I got involved with the international awareness, I've got I don't know, different people using it on t-shirts or logos or whatever. I'm thrilled. And I always tell folks like I want it to be something that this community can get behind and use. And it's been near and dear to me, and I love that you found it and it found its way to you.
I do.
So,
I love it. And it was so thoughtful to get it as a gift. And I've also gifted it. And then I've also asked for other pieces
mhm.
as gifts. And then you have many other very beautiful pieces on your website that are not dyslexia. But
Yeah,
I
that's
just,
before that was the newest line. I mean, we've been
I
like I
just
said,
love
doing.
that it's like you said, it's simple, yet it has a statement. Like if you really just kind of lean in and look,
Yeah,
and it really does. I love the part that, it really is those letters, those four letters kind of together, which is, we're all together in this,
yeah.
but it's just, I don't know. It moves me, and I love to share it with people. I love to, to talk about it, and I've shared it with many friends, and because I think you're right. It does provide that connection
Mhm.
to, like, I felt a connection with you and I didn't even know you. Right. So, I mean, it's just, I follow your work but it's just, I'm amazed that you did that among everything else that you've been doing for the community. So thank you for that. Cause those are beautiful pieces.
One piece with it that I'm super excited about, I want to get away from, it's just jewelry, in the beginning it was jewelry but then I started using it for, like, people had it for books, like someone had a puzzle piece and then realized that was autism and she needed to have a dyslexia piece. But I recently, I'm so excited about a new project. I'm working with the director of the Library of Virginia, Nan Carmack, and we have put together a program called the Dyslexia Friendly Library.
Oh.
And I thought, I was sitting there thinking, like, we're forcing these teachers to do all this stuff. And it's, my slogan is, apparently it does take a village. Well, who else is in the
Love that
village?
too.
Pediatricians, I've been talking a lot with
that
my
whole
pediatrician.
team.
But I started thinking, where's a place that, it's, public space where we can all meet, and literacy. And I'm like, where's the first place I went? The library. That's the first place I drug my kid to the library. It's like, any book you want, like, let's get all the,
Right.
And had my librarian recognize when I went up to her and said, yeah, my kid's, struggling reader, and where he's not really into it. Or maybe she would have noticed that he just got defiant or just closed the books, or maybe they started crying, or, all those signs that means, like, ugh. And so I went to Nan and I said, I've got this kind of crazy idea, but if somehow we could train librarians. And we just sat out and began hashing out, what would this look like? How would you train a librarian? And that module I talked about, the Department of Education, like, well, they should watch that. Once they've watched that, they've got what all the teachers in the state have, and it takes 40 minutes, And we have some of the Virginia branch of the International Dyslexia Association, and all the IDA chapters have these fact sheets. So we had that as part of the challenge. We made this challenge. It's on my website, pqbd.org, and we're working on a dyslexia friendly library website that will have this sort of 2-hour meet the challenge to be savvy enough that you know what dyslexia is, you might recognize the symptoms, what the resources are, there's a bibliography. And those librarians who complete it, they get a little button with the symbol. And I think we're talking about some window signage with it, so the public might see that symbol and know, this is a dyslexia friendly library, that I can find resources, that at least half the staff has done this training. And it's very replicable. I mean, this could be done in Virginia. We launched it in October, in Dyslexia Awareness Month in 2019, right before COVID. And over half of the librarians in the state accepted the challenge. I think there's, oh my gosh, like 93 library branches, and like 40 some jumped on. It was really exciting. And then everything shut down. Yeah. But we just had, for the Virginia library, the school library annual conference, we presented about it. We're going to be in the Virginia branch of the International Dyslexia Association annual conference. We're presenting. And again, anybody here who's interested and has a library connection, or goes to the library, I just think it's such a great way, if we can get more people involved, to just go to your library and talk about it. I mean, it's a simple program, because we just took everything that was already out there for free in the world and put it into a very easily digestible package that in just 2 hours, I think it is, from your desk, that you can have more training than all the teachers have, and know all the resources that all the experts are using. And I just think we're excited about that. So.
No, I love that piece. That's great. I'll be looking forward to checking that out on your website as well. And I do notice too that when you send, when you order the pieces of jewelry too, that you always put a little card in there that talks a little bit. And so I think that piece is also.
Yeah, I've got a bookmark for the Dyslexia Friendly Library that
Yes, I saw that when I ordered the pieces for my course for those gifts, and I saw that and I was like, oh, that'll be wonderful. I'll include that in. Yeah, I thought those were very nice as well. So let's talk about, because you've shared so many amazing things, and I can see that you're wearing many hats as a mom, and there's so many pieces of parenting, like you said earlier, just parenting in general, but parenting, neurodiverse children or dyslexic children, or however you want to say that. there are so many invisible parenting moments that we're all having that our neighbor doesn't see, that our sisters don't see, that our best friend doesn't see. There's just so many pieces of, like you said, picking up from school. You got to go run to the restroom. You got to get in the car, hurry up, hurry up. I mean, there's just all these pieces. And so one piece I want to make sure moms hear is, if your cup is empty, then you can't pour from it. So it's so critical that we figure, and I'm not an expert in this area. I am a work in progress, but as it relates to self-care, to me, that is just, it looks different in different seasons. And some seasons we're able to, you're probably in a season now where you maybe can take a few more minutes for yourself than you were when your kids were, first and second grade, or I'm not sure how close your boys are in age. But what are some of your favorite self-care practices that you would want to share? Because I love to hear different perspectives from people and give moms some different ideas of things to try out.
Well, I was raised by two psychologists, one with child psychology and one started a counseling program at a university. And my brother and I laugh that we're shrunken little heads, like we've been shrunk by the shrinky dinks, we used to call them. But I think for my self-care advice, it's a little woo-woo, but it's to write a letter. I wrote the letter to my son, actually. He, at almost 18, I hear these beautiful stories of the moms who get the kid who tearfully looks at him, is like, you saved me, and all that. And my son is a typical teenage boy. That has not happened. But I wrote him a letter. I don't know if I'll ever give it to him. I haven't given it to him yet, but it just told him a little bit about where I was on that day that I wrote it. I think when I wrote it, something had happened that day, and maybe it wasn't a bad thing, although it could have been something that I felt like I needed to talk about. But I just sort of fleshed out a letter and let that inner voice that we all have speak, and somehow putting it on paper was really sort of therapeutic for me. And I'll pull that letter out every now and then and read it. And it sort of capsulizes that moment in a way. And I'll probably give it to him someday, but that's a weird self-help. I mean, otherwise I take a bath and have a glass of wine and go talk with a friend who's in the same boat,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to downplay, go join Decoding Dyslexia. And
find your tribe, find your mom. Yeah, exactly. Your mom friend.
But if you're in that quiet moment, for me, it's the early morning hours. I actually wrote a 10-page letter this morning to myself, but that's my thing as a letter writer. So that would be my piece of advice.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm also going to put in the show notes links to, the different things that we've talked about today. That way people can know where to connect with you and follow you and find out more information about some of these pieces that you've shared. So thank you so much for that. And I want to tell you, I know I'll be early to tell you this because when we're recording this, but happy Mother's Day. And thank you for all that you do.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mamas, and there are many shapes and forms of them. So, no, I love what you're doing. And I just, apparently it does take a village.
I know. I love that. When I saw that in your email, I was like, oh, I love this. This is perfect. I love that. Apparently it does take a village. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. And I so enjoy everything that you're doing, and we'll continue to follow you as well. And congratulations to your son and both your sons. I hope they're both doing well this year. I know this has been a different year for all of us, starting this time almost a year ago, or right at a year ago. And so I know it's been a different kind of last year, but it sounds like, they're both in positions to have exciting things in the future. So congratulations for that as well.
Thank you. It's been wonderful chatting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening today, and happy Mother's Day to you. You are an amazing warrior mom, and together we can do hard things, right? Are you new to dyslexia? If you are and you're looking for more resources, then go to dyslexiamomlife.com/start here, where I have resources for you from blog articles, other podcast episodes you can listen to, and also free resources. And do you want to connect with our guest this month? Then be sure to go to dyslexiamomlife.com to find each of the episodes listed there from this month, so you can connect with all these amazing moms on our podcast. And we have a special episode that we're going to be releasing on May 31st, so you don't want to miss that. Be sure to subscribe, though, because we are going to be releasing these Mother's Day episodes throughout the month of May. Have a great day, and remember, you got this.